Good evening. Welcome to the June 11th edition of the Downers Grove Village Council meeting here in Chambers. Welcome. Good to see you all. If you're home watching, we welcome you as well and appreciate you taking the time. As is our tradition, we'll begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Rosa, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Barnett,
Here.
Commissioner Jose, Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit,
Here.
Commissioner Gilmartin,
Here.
Commissioner Glover,
Here.
Commissioner Tully,
Here.
Commissioner Davenport.
Here.
Welcome all. Item 3 on our agenda tonight, minutes of previous council meetings. Is there a motion?
Mayor, I move to adopt the June 4th, 2024 Village Council meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
Any comments or questions on those minutes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mayor, I move to adopt the June 4th, 2024 executive session meeting minutes.
Second.
Any comments or questions on those? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 2 passes unanimously. Just like that, we're on to item 4. This is the public comment portion of our meeting. This is the portion of the meeting where we take and invite public comment on items not on tonight's agenda. There will be opportunities a little later on for either active or first reading agenda items for additional public comment. So if you're here with something for us not on tonight's agenda, please come on down to the podium. All right, we'll continue on. Item 5 is our consent agenda. Is there a motion?
Mayor, I move to adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. We are flying tonight. Item 6 is our active agenda. We normally would take a first reading portion. We do not have any of that coming up, so we just have an active agenda tonight. These are items which we have discussed previously at least one time, sometimes in some cases more often than that. These are items on which we do plan to take action this evening. Is there a motion concerning comprehensive financial report?
Mayor, I move to adopt a resolution to accept the annual comprehensive financial report of the Village of Downers Grove for the fiscal year January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023 as presented.
Second.
Any audience comments or questions on this item? Council comments or questions? Rosa, please call the roll.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit,
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin,
Aye.
Commissioner Davenport,
Aye.
Commissioner Tully,
Aye.
Commissioner Glover,
Aye.
Mayor Barnett.
Aye. Passes 6-0. Is there a motion concerning a PUD?
Mayor, I move to adopt an ordinance approving certain amendments to planned unit development number 57 located at 3300 Finley Road as presented.
Second.
Do you have any audience comments or questions on this item? Council comments or questions? Rosa, please call the roll.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit,
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin,
Aye.
Commissioner Davenport,
Aye.
Commissioner Tully,
Aye.
Commissioner Glover,
Aye.
Mayor Barnett.
Aye. 2 passes 6-0. Is there a motion concerning Walnut Avenue?
Mayor, I move to adopt an ordinance authorizing a special use for 5230 Walnut to permit a vehicle body and paint finishing shop as presented.
Second.
Any audience questions or comments on this item? Council comments or questions? Rosa, please call the roll.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit,
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin,
Aye.
Commissioner Davenport,
Aye.
Commissioner Tully,
Aye.
Commissioner Glover,
Aye.
Mayor Barnett.
Aye, that 2 passes 6-0. We are on to the mayor's report. I do not have a report this evening except to mention to anyone watching at home or who might be with us for the first time tonight or watching this at a later date. This council does actually talk together and consider audience input and discuss things. Those last 3 items, as mentioned, had been talked about at least once previously. Bless you. So the lack of discussion tonight was not a lack of interest or care, but simply part of the process by where we had already had several public conversations and people didn't have any additional questions. Council member reports. This is an opportunity for council members to report out on goings-on in the community, other organizations that they're working with or part of, or things they think the public should know about. So we'll start this time with Martin Tully.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple things. First of all, we had two items tonight that we did speak about earlier. Thank you for pointing that out, Mayor. Both items, both with respect to the plan unit development on Finley Road and the Walnut Avenue vehicle body and paint shop, represent current organizations or businesses or both in our community that have decided to reinvest or further invest in Downers Grove, for which we're very grateful. We're glad we can see that, and in particular, good luck and best wishes to Midwestern University and a further expansion in our community. Every project's been fantastic, and we love it when you bring things to us, so it's been a great partnership. Thank you very much. And the second thing I wanted to say, Mayor, is that the only thing that is even close to being as exciting and as anticipated as the near completion of the new Village Hall and Police Station, which we had a chance to take a look at tonight, and it's just fabulous. The only thing that even comes close to being that exciting is, of course, the fact that there are only 9 days left until Rotary Grow Fest. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Chris?
No report other than to wish my oldest daughter a happy birthday. Thank you.
Fantastic. Mike?
I just echo everything that Commissioner Tully has shared and wish him a happy birthday. His birthday was yesterday.
Thank you, Commissioner.
You're welcome.
Danny?
No report. Thank you, Mayor.
Leslie?
Yep, just a thank you to everybody who came out for Pride Fest on Saturday. Happily, the rain held off, and it was a very successful event. Upwards of, I believe, about 400 people came. There are more events that they are holding for Pride Month, so you can go to eqdg.org and find more. I believe there's one being held at Orange and Brew on Friday evening, so come out and chat with some folks and learn more about EQDG. That's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Item 9 is our manager's report. Dave, you think we can do that here?
If it's all right with the council, we could reconvene in the committee room for that.
Set up for that? Okay. We will take about a 5-minute recess. We have manager's report, which is going to talk a little bit about some long-range planning and financial issues. We will take that up in the committee room next door. You're all welcome to join us. All right, we are reconvened in the committee room to do a little bit of discussion about some long-range planning. Dave?
It's long-range planning time again. This time we're doing an update. Long-range planning is done in earnest in a more robust fashion in line with council swearing in. So last summer we did a lot of heavy lifting and prepared a long-range plan. This time we're just doing a quick update, so 3 meetings I'll get to. As a reminder, long-range planning is a combination of strategic planning and financial planning. We used to do them on separate occasions, and we struggled to put them together in a way that made sense. So really what we do with long-range planning is we make our strategic decisions with a mind towards our financial realities and can play in both arenas at the same time. This allows us, this unique approach, to come up with a plan that drives not only annual budgets and budgeting decisions that the council makes, but policy decisions that the council considers throughout the year, and daily operations. Yes, the village staff does refer to items in the long-range plan on an almost daily basis to help us make decisions to implement council policies. The long-range plans have 4 key components. They consist of strategic goals, key trends and issues that we're experiencing now that may affect our long-term future, strategies, solutions, activities, if you will, that will address those key trends and issues that we've identified, and also the council's work plan for the duration of this seated council, sometimes referred to as priority action items. And when we prepare these long-range plans, in our flight analogy, we're at the 30 to 40,000 foot level, almost to the top, right? Guiding, directing, and then the day-to-day work happens like in meetings like we just had. So right about at the 30 to 40,000 foot level. The current long-range plan was prepared, as I said, last summer, and now we're just doing a quick update. We'll do it in 3 meetings, 1 per month, 1 in June, 1 in July, and 1 in August. Tonight we'll start with just the introduction and a focus on general fund sustainability. We'll come back in July. We'll take a look at property tax levy and public safety pension related issues. And we'll also at that same meeting address water fund sustainability issues. This has to do with our new water rate study and how the council would like to address the lead service line replacement act in future years. And then in meeting number 3, we'll just take a quick review of our priority action item list for this council, see where we're at. Now we've been giving monthly updates this year, so I think everybody knows where we're at. We just want to do a quick check in and review to make sure we're on track and make any changes as necessary. So that's a little bit of background and schedule. I wonder if it's been a minute on our goals. There are several of them in the long-range planning document. They're here on the whiteboard. Steward of financial, environmental, and neighborhood sustainability, exceptional services, top quality infrastructure, strong and diverse local economy. Those have been in the plan for a long, long time. The last couple, or the next three, or our next couple here, safe and welcoming community and a beautiful community. This council and the immediate previous council did a lot of work articulating those goals. Those are reflected in the long-range plan. And then also long-standing, the final one, continual innovation. If you're interested in these goals, you can read the long-range plan. There's a paragraph or two that explains each of these and how they're applied. We're expecting to revisit these tonight for two reasons. One, we really do take a deep dive on them on the first round, and the council did some great work there and made some changes. But I think more importantly, reason number two is the guiding DG process that we're going through right now, comprehensive plan, bike and ped plan, environmental sustainability plan, streetscape plan, really hit at these issues, and we expect the results of the guiding DG to inform next year's round of goal setting. And I think you'll see more than ever a stronger connection to those documents in our long-range plan. So before I get into general fund sustainability, I'll pause and ask the council any questions or comments just in the intro and where we are with the goals. Okay. I want to talk about our general fund and how we're achieving financial sustainability in that fund. This is our main operating fund, so most of the services we provide are accounted for in this fund. And for those following along, there's a report that has quite a bit more detail than I'll go into tonight, online under the agenda materials. But this is just an overview. This is a graph showing our revenues and expenses in our main operating fund from 2019, and then the projections all the way through 2026. The expenses are shown in this orangey peach color in the bar graph. The revenue line is at the top here. And then we'll talk a little bit about these areas labeled unplanned transfers. So let's talk a little bit about the time frame in the last couple of years from 2020 through 2023. You'll see here, this is a good thing. When the revenue line is taller than the expense bar graph, that's a good thing, right? Revenues exceeding expenses. And really, it's the difference between the top of this peach color expense bar graph and the black line. That's a pretty good positive gap. That means that revenues were significantly greater than expenses in those years. And that really allowed us to take money out of the general fund and place it in areas that we had a demonstrated need and setting us on good footing for the future. And so over that time frame, from 2020 through 2023, the council has directed the shifting of several $1 million into some key areas. First and foremost, the Civic Center. That project has had a lot of money shifted into it, allowing us to pay down the debt on the bonds and to put more of a down payment, if you will, on that project, easing pressure on property taxes. Right? So if you recall, we didn't have to increase a property tax levy to pledge towards retiring the debt on that building. Also, move money to pay for vehicles, especially during that time it was very difficult to obtain vehicles and there were some changes in the marketplace that were challenging. And also placed money in our health and risk funds. We are self-insured for both, so that put us in a more robust position, helping us a good footing for going forward as well. If you're interested in those transfers, specifically what they're used for, how they bolstered our overall financial position, there's some detail in that in the report. I'm happy to answer any questions the council may have tonight. So the last 4 years has been tremendous performance in the general fund, allowing us to address identified needs. Looking for the next 3 years, the current year we're in 25 and 26, we project that revenues will remain higher than expenses. But that gap we think is going to close. We believe that revenues during that time frame will probably go up at a rate of 1% to 3% a year. In the report, you'll see our major revenue sources in the general fund, how they've performed in the last couple of years, with a little bit of a look forward and what we think is going to happen and why. We just think that we're not going to continue to experience that kind of revenue growth in the near future. But we do think they'll grow a little bit from 1% to 3%. On the expense side, we're experiencing the same kind of expenses that households are and businesses. We're not immune to that. So 3 to 5% a year, we think, is likely moving forward. And what's going to happen then is we believe that the revenue line will stay higher than the expense line. So we don't necessarily have to make any particular policy adjustments during this time frame. There is one potentially significant issue on the horizon, and that was an action by the State General Assembly. The state, I don't know if it's been signed into law yet, but if it hasn't, we're expecting it to be soon, is eliminating the 1% sales tax on grocery-related items. That's across the board through the whole state. That is money that has been going to municipalities. For the Village of Downers Grove, that's been about $1.3 million a year. So effective January 1st of 2026, not 25, but 26, that local 1% sales tax that goes to local municipalities on groceries will go away statewide. The good news is the state, in their action, also gave every municipality the authority to enact a local 1% tax to replace it. So that is an issue really we're just highlighting now, but that's something we think next summer would be the best time to address that issue, see how it shakes out. So with this information in mind, some very simple and straightforward strategies and solutions. They sound familiar. They've been in previous plans. They've served us well. First, continue to manage expenses within budget. This is just how we roll now at the Village of Downers Grove. We've been so financially minded for years. That's been reflected in our audit that the council just approved here. We, as your staff, continue to always work within stated budgets with an eye on expense control. Continue to maintain the fund balance at the recommended level. Financial agencies, rating agencies, and just good practice and our own policy says that we should have about 38% of our annual expenses held in that fund balance for reserve. So we'll continue to do that. If revenues continue to be significantly higher than expenses, if we continue to see this kind of gap, this strategy of moving it to identified needs has worked well for us the last 4 years. We think we should continue to do that, probably with an eye towards that civic center, making sure that we're always looking to protect having to raise property taxes in the future. So that's worked well. We're recommending that we continue to use that practice. And then finally, looking ahead, in 2025, adopt a 1% sales tax on groceries to replace that $1.3 million revenue stream. But again, that's just looking ahead. We'll go into more detail in that next year. That is a very brief overview of the report. If you're interested in the details, please take a read. I'll look to my left and check in with Mike and Enza and Doug, make sure I didn't miss anything here. And with that, I'll turn it back to the mayor and council.
Beginning of a conversation. So anybody have any initial reactions or questions about either what's in the report or what was just presented? Chris?
Yeah, reaction. This is good news to see these revenues exceed our expenses and continue to do that. I tend to agree. I think that is going to slow down, so I'm glad that we're thinking of it that way. It's also, I think, worth noting our expenses. Most of our expenses is staff.
Correct.
So that 3 to 5% feels in line with what we might expect, salary growth, those kinds of things to go up. On the grocery tax, and I guess the one question I had is the 1% that we are currently receiving based on what is sold in 605, in Downers Grove?
In the actual stores within the
Okay,
village
so it's not a
limits, yes.
pool that we then get a portion
correct.
of. It's
The actual taxes paid at the grocery stores in our
Okay.
village.
Okay.
Which is an important point because of where we sit in the marketplace and where our grocery stores are physically located. We believe that it is an attracting,
Yeah,
right? And we're capturing not only local dollars, but some non-local dollars
sure.
from surrounding areas.
Sure, yeah. Okay, yeah. And then I think one small point, as I was looking through the report, we talked about this a little bit, but I noticed that our cell tower rental for the providers went down. And it was explained to me that that was based on consolidation, so meaning providers consolidated so they don't need as many transmitters or.
But the escalators in those contracts are really good and really tightly written, so
Yes.
those are performing well, the ones that are here, so.
Yeah, so, interesting. Thank you.
Is there a reason we left the police pension off of the transfers to address needs?
Only because we're going to talk about it in some detail at the next meeting. But yes, we have been through an assignment using basically the same concept of collecting dollars now for use at the future time for pensions.
Important strategy that we've been employing that you may find it's not as much flexibility coming up. Leslie?
Yeah, kind of building off the 3 to 5%. Again, we are a service organization, so we are mostly people, right? So, but, you know, the costs of just goods and things have risen well beyond 3 to 5%, right? I mean, which is what we've seen. So I'm just curious, and I'm sure you're not going to have the answer for this now, and I don't know why I haven't thought of this question before, but just curious about when we go through some of these plans, what are we thinking in terms of, you know, we obviously know based on contracts what our you know, our different union increases are, but do we kind of also, I assume we also have a plan for how that might be mirrored in our non-union employees, and thinking about that, especially as it relates to the fact that we know that goods and whatnot are up. And so, I mean, I can even think about myself as an employee, you know, I felt like a 4 or 5% raise was great over the last couple of years each year, but it's not when you're looking at inflation of 8 to 10%. So, you know, I just thinking about, again, us as a service organization and making sure that we're doing right by the folks who are providing said services, you know, that I just want to make sure that we're not kind of
We keep an eye.
estimating some of that, because
Right.
I do think it's important.
Right. That's absolutely important. That comes right from the council and then is reflected back through the staff and the staff decisions that we make in those areas. We want to make sure our employees are compensated commensurate with the market, so we do look at that all the time. Also, in an organization as large as ours, with the number of employees, it's not just a straight line number, because we have some retirements and some turnover and some replacement and some vacancy factor. So that's why, so sometimes if you say we get 4% raise, it might show up as 3% increase in the budget. That's when you factor in the timing and the turnover.
Yeah.
So they're similar, but they may
Yeah.
not reflect the actual raises.
Yeah.
Sure.
Which is, you know,
It's just an extra fun twist.
it's a lot of moving parts, and you know, folks like Robin and Baker have really helped us get a better budgeting for that. So sometimes those numbers are a little higher than the budget shows. And also, on the non-personnel related expenses, yes, those have been tracking at some pretty significant expense increases and inflationary effects. A lot of those come out of the equipment replacement fund. Those expenses have been going up much faster than these numbers in the general fund, and that's why when we took a lot of money from here and put it in the equipment replacement fund, that is addressing those inflationary figures that are significantly higher than 3 to 5%.
Right.
So we're feeling it, and it's in a different fund, and also in capital fund has experienced that as well. And we have, I didn't put it on the board, but we have moved money from here into the capital fund. So yes, we're seeing that as well, as Commissioner Sadowski, if you get points out, just in a different fund, and those numbers are higher.
Yeah, that was just my nice way of saying, I understand that we want to be responsible taxpayer money, but also we want to make sure that we're, you know, a service organization and having appropriate salaries. And then the other kind of, I guess, comment-ish question, I assume the reason why we're thinking that we're going to start to kind of see that lower sets of revenue is because we've now gotten through that the honeymoon period of the sales tax from the state, right?
Yes.
And so now we're probably expecting it to kind of level off a
It
little bit.
has
so
leveled
just-
off, and we think, it looks like, I think Commissioner Gilmartin alluded to this or said it earlier tonight, that just the economy seems to be not as inflationary as it has been, and so we just want to be a little conservative with those numbers. We think they'll reflect that.
Thank you.
I was just going to ask a quick question about that grocery tax. The 1.3 million that's the revenue stream we're getting right now.
Currently, yes.
When we go to enact that, do we have additional expense in managing that, since it's not?
I don't know if we've looked into that, but I'm going to look to Enza, and I don't know how that's going to be administered.
Yeah, I'm not positive about that yet either. The law hasn't been signed into law yet, so we don't have the.
So there could be a little bit of a hit there.
Yeah, there
It
could
may
be,
not be a one-to-one.
could be an admin expense, and there's some trade-offs here. If the state continues to administer it, that's lower administrative fees for us. It's also not as transparent,
Right.
right? And so if we end up getting it on our side, yes, there'll be more administrative fees and costs, et cetera. We might get a little better understanding of what's happening as well.
And it's not for all groceries, it's specific types of foods.
I believe that's correct. I'm not, there's certain things that aren't taxed like that. And so, because this is so fresh and new, we haven't really dived into those details. We will be ready to go with that on the next round with all those, once, like Enzo was saying, once the law's been finalized and all the rules associated with it come out.
So, a lot of to be determined there.
Yeah, someone's gonna write down all the details, right, because we don't know yet.
Yeah. Well, and of course, too, with all this, we have to plan for the future, right? We have to make projections, but, I mean, it was just a few years ago that CPI was like 1%. I mean, and you got nothing on any money that you had in any accounts, and so knowing that all this could change on a dime, it's really, I think it's a great reflection on past council and our staff in terms of, where we are today, and have that cushion there, because there's volatility ahead.
Almost my whole career, interest income wasn't a thing that showed up, and
Yeah.
now it moved the needle on some of
Yes.
these numbers here. so.
Right.
Thanks, Mayor. Just picking up a few things. First of all, with respect to the question about compensation of the non-union employees, when was the last time that we did a comprehensive compensation market study?
So we don't do them as formally as we used to, but we do them informally on an almost ongoing basis,
Okay.
using resources from Enza and her team and Lauren in that department in HR. Also, in our partnership with DMMC, we always have an eye for this. So I want to make sure I capture that correctly.
So right, okay, thank you. So it's not as though we haven't done one in a while.
Right.
I think we monitor it more than ever now. It's just because it's so
I think we
dynamic.
feel like we're pretty current.
Continuous
Ongoing.
monitoring.
Yeah.
Pretty current.
Continuous monitoring, okay, thank you. The increase with respect to payroll, is that exclusively payroll, or is part of that also pension increases, or the pension increases separate?
The expenses, all expenses in the general fund, including those that you just mentioned, are factored into here, even though we're going to have a more meaningful discussion,
Right.
deeper discussion here.
Right, but
They are
I
all
was
included.
specifically focusing on the 3 to 5% increase.
Yes.
I forget what the number was,
That's all things.
that's both compensation, that's
Yeah.
both payroll and required pension
So
contribution.
all expenses, all personnel expenses, which are salaries, benefits,
Right.
et cetera.
And I'm guessing a good portion of that increase is, God bless you, is mandatory pension increase.
You betcha. This is
Probably-
great introduction
Yeah.
from, yes.
Probably
absolutely.
70%,
Right.
80%?
It's a big chunk, then we'll have that number available next week.
Okay, the only reason I put that out is because obviously, for those keeping score at home, there's part of this that we have control over, and part of it we have zero control
Right.
over. It just is what it is. Then last, going back to the grocery tax, I wasn't going to ask this question, so thank you for raising it. As a home rule community, some of those things we can address, obviously not the collection part, but are we limited in what we can include within the definition of groceries?
I believe
We're
we
not-
are.
We are, so we're, so
Again, it's all part of
It's-
that new law that's
it's not-
but I believe. that-
it's not finalized
It's
yet?
probably
No.
going to mimic what the state's,
So the state's going to take it away, but then limit what we can do?
most likely.
Probably.
I suspect
I
they'll come
believe it was
back
voted
and,
on like literally at the
Nothing's
last
changed.
minute, so that, yeah.
Okay. So question about the, if
Martin,
we-
that's what that really amounts to, is you guys can go ahead and charge the same taxes we were charging before, but we want you to be on the hook for it, not us. It's not going to be.
I've seen that movie.
Yeah, right. I know. You've seen it a lot of times. It's
I've
the
seen
same
that
thing
movie.
over and over.
Yeah, that happens yes, okay, well, enough said. I'll get off my soapbox. But key question, picking up on that, since a good portion of that is from people outside of Downers Grove, historically. I know in the past when we've either done increases in sales tax or we've imposed new taxes on commodities, whether it's a restaurant, whatever it is, we need to be mindful of what our neighboring communities are doing.
Right.
So maybe
Yes.
as we look at this from, whether it's DMMC or otherwise, what you don't want to be is the only community
Right.
within 50 miles that has one, because then people won't come to your town.
What are-
Then you'll lose that percentage that is driven by visitors to the town. So I have a feeling everyone's going to do this, but I think we got to keep an eye on it to make sure that we are not creating any disincentives to purchase goods in Downers Grove.
So thank you for that intro, because the DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference has recognized this issue and has already put together a working group to try to make sure that what happens locally is universally and similarly administered across to address the issue that Commissioner Tully just talked about. So we will be participating in that discussion to make sure that there's no sort of, incentive to go one town or the other, et cetera.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Chris?
Yeah, I just want to clarify something Commissioner Davenport said. So with the interest rates going up and the amount of interest income that we are likely seeing now that we weren't before, maybe we were seeing in 22, 23, how are we factoring that in terms of the projections?
I will find out.
Okay.
It's definitely included in the
Yep.
totals, but we will find out what our outlook. We didn't have that listed as one of the
Right.
top 10, so.
But do you think that is in the 1 to 3% of revenue or outside of revenue?
I will find out.
Okay.
I will find
Yeah.
out. I know that our finance department knows what we're earning now in the market.
Of
and
course.
can tell us that. I don't know if it's if we are earning, and we are earning more than 3% right now.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a big enough chunk to really move that needle as far as our overall portfolio. It has driven some of these numbers, so we will find out for you.
Because you said 38% we're holding? 38%
Yes.
we're holding
Yeah,
38%?
Yes, and then we invest that as well, yes.
Okay, so that could be
Yep.
significant.
So we'll ask about
Yeah.
our outlook for interest
Okay.
earnings outlook.
It's terrific that can be part of the discussion, though.
Yeah, it's great.
So many years, and
Yeah.
my years on the District 99 school board, I mean, we just
Zero.
Zero. There's
Yeah.
nothing there
Mhm.
to talk
Yep.
about. So that's a real help.
We will, based on this discussion, go back and update this first report. By the time we put it back together, we'll have that in there.
That's great.
Yeah.
Cool.
You want to come? All right.
Sounds good.
Dave, you got anything else for us this evening?
No.
No? Okay. Anybody that's watching and listening tonight, any comments on this? Talking beginnings of financial conversations.
I'm a little confused about the sort of leveling. If the revenues are going up 1 to 3% and the expenses are going up 3 to 5%, the only way that works is that both of them are 3%. And it doesn't seem to me that the projections are as rosy as I get the impression that you all think it is. And it seems to me also that there are lots of discretionary things going on in the planning now that could be deferred if revenues and flattening revenues are a concern. And lastly, I think that tax on groceries is immoral and should not be taxed at all. So the idea that you're going to impose another grocery tax instead of giving residents, food shoppers relief on their grocery bills is a little puzzling to me. And I think that the Mayors and Managers Organization seems to me like some interesting antitrust issues there. But that's for somebody's law class exam. But it just seems to me that the presentation was interesting, but it has a lot of self-serving adjectives in it about how great things are, and maybe they are, but it doesn't seem to feel like that way to me, especially if the way things are projected and the way the projections of expenditures on this massive plan that we're doing is something to rethink. Thank
Anyone else?
Good question. Forgive me, because math was my worst subject. But as far as this grocery, the sales tax we're talking about eliminating, correct? But what percent would that be that they'd be eliminating? Because the towns are gonna trip over each other, throwing this 1% tax at the consumers. I'm wondering where the benefit is to the consumers.
There's none.
So what's the point?
There's revenue.
Besides bragging points for the governor, basically, I don't see, what's the point of all this? Do they think we're that stupid?
Yes.
The answer is yes.
You got it.
Okay, you got something right.
I'm not confused.
Yeah, there's lots of pieces to this, and one of the things I think that's important to remember, the projected growth rates of expenses and revenues, one of the things that has been the case for 4 years now is that we have had revenues that have exceeded our expenses by quite a bit. And we have been able to take and transfer some of that money to other places where we thought it might be well used, as opposed to not collecting it. That would have been a choice too. In that window of time, we've also, for 3 years, not raised property taxes. So there is, this is never as simple as a bar or one line on this thing. Downers Grove's property taxes, Danny, you could probably help us out. Within DuPage County, there's 35 communities, and we're something like bottom 5.
Yeah.
And so when you say, I don't think we should have a tax on, groceries or vehicle stickers or whatever it is, it's a package that has to do with the cost of living in Downers Grove. And what Downers Grove has been for as long as I can remember is a real value across the county of DuPage. Sure, it remains one.
Yep.
So, when you're exactly right. The governor and Springfield are playing games, right? It's a tax that every community in the state of Illinois has depended on for the last 25 years. Now they're going to tell everybody how great they are because they've eliminated the tax on groceries while the communities still need the
It's
money.
kind of like dangling a carrot in front of us
Yes.
and eating it in front of us.
Leslie pointed out an important thing. We are some number, pick your math for the moment, 68%, 77%, somewhere in there, payroll.
76,
Thank you. And if you look back historically, I think there are still less people working for the Village of Downers Grove today than there were in like 2000. And so there is never a good feeling about raising taxes on anyone, but there is a pretty strong commitment for the last 25 years of people that are managing this village to try and be of value and provide high-quality services, and that frankly takes some people. So I don't know where this is going to land, but I just caution anybody about focusing on any one aspect of this. That's why we have a series of meetings over a long period of time, and that kind of ends up with a budget, because we've talked about all these things. It's an ongoing conversation.
And I'll just add, right, the math is simple, right? If one's growing at 1 to 3 and the other's going to 3 to 5, the lines are going to cross if nothing else changes. A couple things on that. One, they're really far apart right now in the positive, really far. 2, the lines are projected to cross during this planning period. And probably 3, the most important thing, when we say continue to manage expenses within budgets, this staff team is hardwired to identify efficiencies, changes, et cetera. During the time we see those things starting to close, we work really hard to make sure those lines don't cross. In fact, the only time in our, the last time it happened was 2009, was the last time we had expenses exceed revenues. So that's what we're trying to get at. Like, we see this coming. We see it coming because we do exercises like this, and then we work as a staff and council team to make changes on both sides of the equation as necessary to make sure those lines don't cross in the future.
I wasn't a math major either, but I know that the revenue exceeds the expense. So you don't need as much of a percentage gain on the revenue to match
Basically.
even a little bit greater gain on the expense, right? So, because those are not equal numbers. So it's better to focus on maybe the numbers than to think about those percentage.
Yeah.
And you can see with, looking at the best case scenario there, that gap actually grows from what it is right now. So, I mean, and that's realistically, that's as much of a possibility as the worst case scenario right now. So I just like the fact that in all cases, I'm seeing projections where.
Separation in the middle.
That's right, and that's the best we can hope for.
So case in point, look at 21 and 22.
Yes,
Who would have thought that?
right? Who? I mean, no one saw that coming. Yeah.
And Martin, you can help the history here, but I think there's, I'm making this up, but you'll get it closer to right probably, since I think like 2005 or 7, something like that, there have been like 3 or 4 operational tax increases. In other words, we, for many years, the only thing we did was increase the taxes by the amount the state required for pension contributions. And that was done by folks like this, really focused on the expense side of things and lean management. Whether that's all one way or another, too much one way or another, so there's some sort of facts of history. We talk about it being a little rosy and self-serving, maybe, because frankly, it's a pretty rosy and self-serving history. It's fun and easy to say, I don't like it when government raises taxes. But looking at the reality about the way the Village of Downers Grove a piece of your bill, so 9% of your property tax bill, has been managed for the last 15 plus years. It's just been really well done. There's just no other way to describe it. Not that any of us likes higher taxes, but it's been really well done. Warner?
I'd like to give Dave and the council and the staff kudos. I think this is great. It's an excellent overview. I think it's fabulous. I took a long time to put this together. So I want to say that is great, and thank you very much for doing that. Several weeks ago in public comments, I made a comment about mortar and bricks versus home. And along those lines, the home piece would be the safe and welcoming community. One of the things that I will be looking at and perhaps get involved in discussion with the council is what we do to make this community safe and welcoming, because that also has a dollar amount connected to it. And therefore, where are we going to put those dollars? What do we as a community stand for? What do we as a community feel are the priorities where we're going to put those dollars for the safe and welcoming, the home part? Because it's one thing to talk about sewers, but a sewer is not going to put food into the person's mouth who goes to a food pantry. And therefore, how do we address that? And that's something that I will be looking at in the future. But thank you very much for the time spent in putting this together, because it was a lot of work.
Is that the last conversation? Anyone else for tonight? All right, before we wrap this up, anything else from council for this subject? Okay, we are going to go in executive session tonight. So we'll make that motion, and we'll take a few minutes to collect ourselves, and then we'll go into executive session. So is there a motion?
Mayor, I move to convene into closed session pursuant to Section 2C3 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act to consider the selection of a person to fill a public office as defined in this act, including a vacancy in a public office when the public body is given power to appoint under law or ordinance, or the discipline, performance, or removal of the occupant of a public office when the public body is given power to remove the occupant under law or ordinance.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we will not be coming back, guys. Thanks for joining us tonight. We'll take a few minutes to collect ourselves before we get started in executive session.
Thank you.
Thank you.